All right, beautiful. Well, welcome everybody. I'm excited to be here today, and I'm especially excited to have Mr. Leon Botham in the house. Thank you so much for being here, Leon.
My pleasure. Not
Yeah,
sure why you're so excited, but anyway.
yeah. Well, for those of you who don't know Leon, Leon is the president of Newfields Canada and the senior geotechnical engineer with over 30 plus years of experience. And recently, Leon has been awarded two very prestigious awards. One is the ACEC Award for Mentorship. Is that correct?
That's one of them.
That's one of them. And then the
AC
Bobion is
Saskatchewan, and then
sorry, go ahead.
the Saskatchewan, the ACEC Saskatchewan Mentorship Award.
Mentorship Award. And then the Bobion Lifetime Achievement Award for your respective industry. And super exciting. And I know I've mentioned this in the past, but I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge that and say congratulations once again.
Thank you very much. It's one of those things that you got to give back to the community that you're part of. So it's always been part of the way I've operated.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, for everybody who's listening or joining in, feel free to ask questions or to type a question into the chat if something comes to mind. It's going to be pretty casual and informal, so to speak. But I know that we're going to have a couple of late joiners who are going to be popping in as they can, and a few people that are going to be catching the replay. But I want to make sure that if you guys have something that comes to mind, or something that you're curious about, feel free to ask Leon because we've got a pretty unique opportunity to speak with him today. So again, thanks for being here, Leon.
Yeah, I'm expecting to see Chris jump out from underneath the car and throw a question at me the way he's bouncing back and forth there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, Leon, what kind of inspired a lot of this or this conversation was I know that during COVID or as shortly after COVID, you wrote a LinkedIn article that went viral to a certain extent that a lot of people saw some value in. And I understand correctly, the article was based on your experience as a leader. And I'd be curious to know kind of one, what was the motivation behind writing the article? And two, what was the primary purpose that you wanted to get from writing such an article?
The primary motivation is some guy by the name of Matt challenged me to get out of my comfort zone and actually give it a shot. So it's something I'd actually been thinking about previous to actually writing it, but it took a bit of a challenge from this guy here to force me to get out of the comfort zone and actually put some thoughts down on paper. So yeah, it just an opportunity to take what I've learned over the last, at that point, 30 years, being in different positions within different organizations, and what I've learned about myself and about how to work with teams of people over the time. So it forced me to, like I said, out of my comfort zone, but also took a good chance to take advantage of being able to put that down on paper, and hopefully some people got to something out of it. And as you said, it did go a little bit viral. I think it was probably the best viewed things I've put out on LinkedIn. So it was good to see. And subsequent to that, then someone else had requested that they be allowed to reprint it on their website. So it was, and which I understand has gotten some good reviews. So
Yeah. Well, I have been known to push people out of their comfort zone a little bit, and
nah.
Sorry, but not sorry about that.
Exactly.
I think that chances are that was probably something that had been on your mind, maybe even on your heart for a little while. And sometimes all you need is just that little nudge to go ahead and do something like that,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that article, you identified kind of what I saw as four main themes or things that jumped out at you. One was the importance of knowing yourself.
Yep.
The other was the importance of knowing your team, also the importance of knowing your impact or the influence that you have on your team and your presence. And then the fourth one, if I understand correctly, was leading by example,
Yeah.
leading by doing. And so, why those four things, and what was the significance, or what made you kind of boil it down to those four key themes?
I I think as far as the four themes, the first one was if you don't understand yourself, it's hard to understand how you're impacting people. So I've always been a bit of an open book. So if I was pissed off, people knew I was pissed off just by looking at my face. If I was in a good mood, I was smiling and joking around, and just having that understanding of why I react the way I react. So I never really thought much of it until the first time I actually did a personality profile. I can't remember, Myers Briggs or something. I can't remember which one it was, but started. I never really thought that they were that valuable until I actually started reading them, and actually everything that after I did the profile, it was, oh my God, this is me to a T. And I'd been involved in lots of teams of or participating on project teams, and not understanding why different teams react the way they do to different influences. So I worked with a lot of what they call them type A personalities, and had one project where I was the young guy on the project, and I have four guys coming at me from different directions, all yelling in my ear. And it wasn't until I pretty much stood up and told them to all F off and get out of my face that started getting the respect that I needed. So that was one of the first times we actually put together a personality profile for a whole team. And then you could see that all these guys were exactly the same personality type,
Mm.
and they were all doing exactly the same thing. They all wanted to be the top dog. And so you understanding how they interacted with them, like how what their personality type was, went a long way. So you've got to have that mix of personalities. There's people that are gonna that think they know what's best, and there's people that just want to go and do the work. And so having that broad mix of personalities. So I still never really thought much of it until changed careers, and was going through a leadership course with another organization, and the facilitator took a totally different approach to the training, and so he had us do the profile in advance, and then we started on the talking about the different personality types, and so he was just giving general characteristics of different personality types, and so he said, go stand in the corner of the room that you think you fit in. And so because everything he was saying, and so it was quite easy for me to figure out, and it was like everything he was saying, I knew exactly where I was fitting in the room. And so that was just general characteristics of a person. So my desk is actually quite clean compared to what it normally is, and usually a pile of clutter, and I can't sit still for 5 minutes. I've got to get up and move around and talk to people. I can't It takes me a lot of effort to actually get my ideas out there. So if I have to actually, it doesn't take effort to get the ideas out. It takes effort to explain what I'm thinking so people can actually take my ideas and run with them. And anyway, so he went on to more details of what each personality type was like. And he said, okay, once he said that, he said, move around in the room where you think you have to move between quadrants of the room, and move in and out within the quadrant. And I took about 4 steps back and further into the corner of the room. And he's like, what the hell are you doing? And I said, you told me to move if you thought I had to move. And as he's explaining it, I'm also looking at the people that I work with. And it was like things were clicking in my brain about, yeah, this actually makes a lot of sense about how they're interacting with each other, and how they want to work. So I really started paying attention to different people's personalities, and started thinking about it as like, well, the best teams have a mix of personalities. So you've got someone in every quadrant. You've got overlap. You can't have everyone sitting in the same quadrant, because if you're all in the same quadrant, nothing's ever going to get done. It's either if you're depending on where you are, I'm the ideas guy, and I've got the guys down. My wife is exact opposite of me on the personality profiles. So she just likes to put her nose down and do the work. I'm out with the ideas, and so you've got the all different aspects to cover. So that was the big part of the personality. So first getting to know yourself, and then understanding how people are interact,
Right.
and then coming across with how I'm perceived when I'm walking through the office. So I could say a big happy hello, but if I've got a scowl on my face, 99% of the perception is how I look, not what I say. And
Body
so
language
body language, the look
or
on your
energy.
face, how you're carrying yourself, if you got energy or no energy, all those things impact
Those
how
little
you're
subtle
perceived.
cues.
So yeah, it's it. I started as I started realizing the impact I was having just by the way I was looking at people, and then it helped me develop. So now I understand if I'm having a bad day, I don't want my staff to know it. I want to come in and try and look like I'm having a good day, regardless what it is, and not share that stress with them because it's not something they need if they're going to perform to their best.
Right. Well, there's a saying that I've heard oftentimes, and I grew up and spent a lot of years in the hospitality industry. And there's a saying that there's too many chefs in the kitchen. And if you've got too many people that all want to be that top dog, or that all want to be the ones that are in charge, giving the orders, it makes sometimes for a contentious attitude or energy. And I find that in my relationship with my wife, her and I are on very opposite ends of the spectrum. And on paper, we couldn't be more different. But together, that actually makes for like a great team. And I think that the same applies for business and for teams in general. The importance of finding and surrounding yourself with people whose natural skill sets complement your own. And I
Yeah.
think that sometimes we're drawn to people who are more like us, because we have a lot in common and we get along easily. But it's an important distinction to make there, to intentionally seek out people who are a little bit different, who maybe think a little bit different, and who maybe are willing to speak and act a little bit different to really bring out the best in a team or a business. So,
It, totally true. And my wife and I are exactly the same. I'm up here in the quadrant, she's down total opposite quadrants, and just the way we do things. When we're out in a social setting, she likes to find her friends and go sit at the table and not move all night, where I'm bouncing from one group to the next, having the conversations,
little
and
social butterfly.
the social butterfly, where she's got her group of friends. She just likes to find the corner and sit there and visit with them for the evening, and so yeah, it takes that whole group. As far as the being attract or connecting with people that are more like you, it's much easier if you've got to have a conversation if you got five people that all want to talk
Right,
continuously. And not that I'd ever do that,
right,
but it. I think one of the best comments I ever heard was about interviewing people is, if you don't prepare for an interview, you tend to attract people just like you. And I look back at some of the hires I've made over the years, and that's very true. Interviews I went in where I was totally prepared. I was much more or much less likely, or if I was prepared, I was much more likely to hire the person regardless of what they how they were perceived, versus going into an interview unprepared. And I naturally tend to go with people that are more gregarious, more outgoing, and willing to talk. It's just easier to talk to. So if you're prepared, you tend to hire what you need, not necessarily person like you. So uh,
right,
it all comes back to how are you, what do you need on your team, and work from there. So it's like I said, as far as getting to know getting to know myself, it was understanding how people would perceive me is just based on how I act. And then, but it's same thing goes with the team. The team has so different team members. You got to communicate with them differently. Their needs are different. The way they want to do the work is different. Some people would rather just sit in their office and do the work, and never be put on the spot, and others they want to jump in, and so it's having that whole holistic understanding of how people interact with each other is critical to building that high performing team. And so don't assign someone a task that you know they're not going to be good at or that they're not comfortable with. And it's much easier if you don't do that. If you give the people the task that they're good at and let them run with that, and then keep the other stuff to someone else and let them understand what or take on the lead on what that needs to be done there. So, and everyone leads in their own different way. So it doesn't matter the technical lead who likes to put his nose down and stay out of the limelight is just as important a leader as the outgoing person that everyone would normally see as the natural leader in the group.
Right. And to your point there about those personality tests or the importance of knowing yourself, I have the belief that the more that I know about myself and the more that I know about my mind, the better off I am, because the more awareness I have, and it also allows you to not only play to your strengths, but understand some of your weaknesses and maybe be able to outsource some of those. But you mentioned something earlier that I've heard you say before, and that was that you tend to wear your emotions on your sleeve. And that's something that I can relate to. And in a way, I almost see that as a little bit of a blessing, but also a little bit of a curse. And, I think that there's some authenticity involved there. It requires some, being genuine and authentic and open and vulnerable. But it can also be a negative if you're not careful. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, how important is it for you to manage your energy and manage your emotions for the sake of your team and for the sake of your business? And what do you do specifically to ensure that you're in the best possible headspace mentally and emotionally when you do come into the office?
I think the key thing for me and managing the headspace is if I don't make it to the gym in the morning, I'm a totally different person than if I get my exercise in, and so that's part of how I manage the energy. And as far as understanding the headspace that I'm in, I have to be paying attention, which is exhausting at times. Having to pay attention to what mood you're in, how do you feel, are you energetic, are you tired, whatever it is. And it's almost more exhausting trying to figure out what space you're in at the moment than it is actually controlling things. So one of the most exhausting is, and not that this is a bad situation, but sitting in a web meeting for hours on end and trying to keep some energy and trying not to like just because your body language still comes across
Right.
uh, on camera. So if you're on camera, and I've been in lots of web meetings where the rule is it doesn't matter how many people are on the call, and if there's screens are being shared, your camera is on, so people actually see your body language. And it's like if you're like
Yeah.
looking around or not paying attention or just slunched over in your chair, it
Very
sends that
distracting.
message. You're distracting, but it sends a message that you're not really engaged in that conversation. So
Right.
keeping that engagement up, even regardless of the situation, going to trade shows and just wandering around a trade show and meeting people and talking continuously, explaining to my young guys that I've taken with me. You're in a trade show for 8 hours a day, talking to people for 8 hours a day. That means you're mentally on for 8 hours a day. And if you don't think you're going to be tired at the end of that 8 hours, you're wrong. Because if you're totally engaged and totally on and keeping your focus and trying to keep that energy up, it is very draining to try and do that for 8 hours a day, 4 days in a row. And so you come back exhausted and you need 3 or 4 days to recover just because of the exhaustion of trying to keep that up. So
Right.
Can I
Yeah.
interrupt for a sec, guys?
Absolutely. I was going to call on you here, Chris. Go ahead.
Hey, do you guys find that you have that ability to turn a switch on or off for the situation you're dealing with? Like, I understand how you guys are describing the situation. I just find that those situations are more in certain environments where you get to an environment that's kind of uncontrollable, where you really need to shut a certain switch off in your life. Like maybe it's a personal problem, or you got pulled over on your way to work and you got a speeding ticket or a seatbelt ticket, or rolled through a stop sign or something like that, where it initiates that frustration in your day that's in that uncontrollable. Something I learned playing hockey was you can only control the controllables. So it's one of those situations where I have a career that I got to go to work, that there's so many uncontrollables that I can't deal with. I just have to learn to shut that switch off and go and do my job to the best professional ability I have to do it. And like you said earlier, you gotta step away sometimes, and there's lots of times I've grounded myself where I didn't go and do the flight because mentally I couldn't get to that headspace I needed.
Right.
Yeah, no, and I agree 100%. And I can honestly say, 20 years ago, when I first started having a management role, my first role where I was actually managing a group of 25. Well, it started off with 20 people or 25 people, and grew the office to 65 people in 4 years. And I was the manager, and I was responsible for that group. But I never knew how to turn off that switch. It was not in my nature until I actually started getting at that better understanding of myself through the personality profiles and other things that I've done over the years, to understand why something sets me off the way it sets me off. Once I started understanding that, then I could go back and say, okay, this makes a lot more sense now. I can actually, I know why this is hitting me the way it is. So I had a little more control over it. But the first time managing a big group of people on my own, and trying to provide leadership for that group, it was not easy. But as I've grown, got more experience with it, it gets easier. It's still not easy all the time, but it gets easier as you do it more. And the worst example I can come up with is it's a good example in that it still shows you can't turn everything off. Anytime I've ever had to let someone go from a job, and I did that, had to do that in the fall. And I was talking to our HR manager, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah," explaining that I'm okay. I said, "But this is how I'm going to be. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up, and before I even leave the house to go to the gym, my heart's going to start racing. I'm going to feel pressure in my chest. My brain's going to be going 90 miles an hour everywhere except where it should be. I'm going to get to the office, and I'm going to be sweating. My palms are going to be sweaty. You're not going to want to be anywhere near me because I'm going to be a sopping wet mess. And then my heart's going to really start racing about 5 minutes before I go and do the deed. And then about 30 minutes later, the adrenaline rush is going to end, and I'm going to be totally exhausted." And so there's things that I still have no idea how to turn off. I can mask it, but I can't turn it off.
So in that situation, I can relate almost daily when I go to work. I have to change my routine, and I'm very much a creature of habit. I'm very much a type A personality, but in a situation where I know I'm going to be over and above stressed than my normal day-to-day activities, I can't go to the gym in the morning. The older I get, the more I find that's where I damage myself, because I'm not mentally paying attention to the routine. I don't have a proper range of motion. Maybe I didn't warm up properly. And I trace back a lot of my injuries. It's on days that I'm trying to preoccupy my brain before I go do something not in my comfort realm that I got to go do. So those are the days that, when I'm super exhausted and I crawl out of the aircraft, I can barely get sandals on. I still go to the gym because I find I'm more mentally tired than physically. But if I went to the gym prior to, my whole day doesn't jive. Like I don't have that mental and physical balance that I need to get through that stressful moment. So that's where I've learned. But then I have expectations of myself that aren't probably normal, and I expect more things out of myself. And then my coworkers and family members and friends think I'm expecting the same out of them. And that's the biggest reason I've reached out to Matt to try and get some coaching, is to really learn, like you said, as you get experience in life, how to control those situations and how to really hone in on that experience. Because man, it's rough.
Yeah, no, and I'll tell Matt to not make fun of me before I say this, but typically, if I know that something like that is going to happen, where I know it's going to be one of those days that those are the days that I just get on the treadmill and walk,
Yeah.
because that's although Matt knows I've still done it, but that's the days I'm least likely to injure myself. I have jumped on a treadmill and broken my arm, and that's how I first met Matt, was because I was recovering from that injury, but yeah, those are the things that you adjust what you're doing and how you do it a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though I still have to get to the gym, otherwise I know my day is
Oh yeah.
totaled. But and I'm not a guy that's going to go in the evening. So, but if you've never done like a personality profile, a disc, or what's the one you had, Matt, the 16
Yeah, 16
personality.
personalities. Yeah. Yeah.
I highly recommend you just do that, and then read everything you can on those, because it gives you so much insight into why you're reacting the way you're reacting to certain stimulus in your life. I didn't believe it until I actually did it, and literally now, for the most part, within about 2 hours of meeting someone, if I'm working with them, I am getting to know them. Within about 2 hours, I can generally get a pretty good idea where they fit on the range of personality types,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps me that way, just because I figured it out in my head. I can't explain necessarily why I think where I figured out where they fit, but 80% of the time when I've done this and said I have a good shot or handle on where you sit in the personality types, and I'm 80% of the time I'm pretty damn close. So just because I've paid attention to it, and it's I figured as I've grown, it's something that's been important to me to help grow my teams and make them succeed. So
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know Chris is an ex-professional hockey player and now works as a helicopter pilot. And as you can imagine, both of those are careers that require you to put your personal life aside and focus on the task at hand. And you got to be 100% dialed in and on the ball. And at least that's the expectation. And, I think that just goes back to the point that Leon was making earlier, Chris, that the importance of understanding and knowing yourself, because what works for somebody, it might not necessarily work for others. But I know that for me, I've really struggled in the past with being able to flip that switch, like you said, and just turn it on or turn it off. And I know that I have to do everything that I can to ensure that before I start my day, or before I get in front of people like you or my clients or even my family for that matter, that I got to be in the right headspace mentally and emotionally. Otherwise, I have a tendency to dump on those people around me. And the gym has always been an outlet for me to be able to do that, whether it's going for a little walk around the neighborhood, kind of clear my head. I find that if I'm in my head, I'm dead, so to speak. And that sometimes just getting out of my head and into my body is a great little way for me to kind of hit the reset button and get some of that anxious energy out, for sure. But I appreciate the question, Chris. That's awesome. And I mentioned this at the start, but I'll say it again, that if there's anybody with a question or a comment, feel free to either unmute yourself and throw it out there or put it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. But
I'm just going to add one more thing, Chris, and this goes back to what I said about early on, and so I'd taken over this office. I lived in Toronto. I moved back to Saskatoon, and I took over management of the office here, and it was 26 people, and we grew it to 65 over 3.5, 4 years before I stepped aside. And so my official last day as office manager was December 31st, and Christmas Eve was a Friday, and I got home from work on Friday, and I wasn't going to be back in the office until after New Year's. And my daughter looked at me and said, "When is your last day as office manager?" And I said, "Technically the 31st, but today was the last day in the office until I'm no longer office manager." And she literally looked at me and said, "Good, you're never allowed to have another management or leadership job because I don't like what it does to you."
Mm,
So
interesting.
it's like, ouch. So when you're, like, and it doesn't matter. You can try and leave it at the office or leave it at home. It always carries back one way or the other, and so it's not, you can't totally separate all aspects of your life. So it doesn't really matter if you're having a shitty day at the office, it's going to somehow carry over to come back home, and if you're having a shitty day at home, it's going to carry over to the office, and so that makes personal life and work life make it all that more challenging.
To that point there, Leon, I hear a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people who tell me that they want to be their own boss, and I think that to a large extent, entrepreneurship and business in general has been glorified, especially on Instagram or social media and things like that. And I talk to a lot of people who say that they want to own their own business or they want to be their own boss. But I'm curious, what are some of the things that somebody might be surprised to learn about being the boss or being the leader in a situation like that?
Oh, well, being the boss, everything relies on you. So if you're the owner, if you're the one, so my one of the comments I like to make to my staff when people, letting someone go is never easy, but sometimes it's just got to be done because it's not a fit. And what I've always told my staff is, it's right now, I have 15 families' livelihoods
Mm,
that I'm responsible for,
a lot
and
of
I want
pressure.
to see. It's a lot of pressure, and a lot of these guys have young kids, young families, newborns, spouses. They might be taking care of parents as well, and so there's 15 livelihoods that I'm responsible for, and it's not all glory. There's some really shitty days where you have to make those tough decisions, which aren't a lot of fun. Um, You've got people that are having issues, whether it be home life or a loss of a family member. Those are all things, and so all those pressures add up as being part of the boss, part of being the manager, the leader, the boss, whatever you want to call it. But being true to yourself and being true to your staff and your people, is where the leadership is most important. So you've got to be true to yourself, but you've got to be true to the people that are working with you, that are relying on you for their livelihood. And the shitty decisions, the sooner you make that decision, the better, generally speaking, because sometimes the outside forces change the reality of that decision. So uh, um, delaying that shitty decision can have a huge impact on your business moving forward. So it's so important to, if you know the decision has, if your gut is telling you the decision has to be made, you probably should make it right away. And I'm as guilty as everyone because I don't want to make those decisions. Uh, but there's times if your gut is telling you it's got to be done, it probably has to be done. Um, but literally, it isn't. Yeah, you can make the good money, you can set the good life or set yourself up for the good life and retirement and whatnot. But you're the leader. You're the one everyone is looking up to make sure that they have a paycheck, that they can go home safe every night, that they can take care of their families, that they can grow their careers and whatnot. So it is it's a lot of pressure sometimes when you think about it, and but at the same point, I love what I do and love working with the people, and I think one of my biggest the thing I'm most thankful for is when I get to see someone who has done so much more with their career than I ever thought they ever thought they could. So seeing people grow their careers and taking on new challenges and taking on a new career uh, is just rewarding to see. So I've got I've got people that I used to work with that I hired that are CEOs of major mining companies right now, and so to think that I had a small part in their career development, that it's pretty neat. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love that. I can relate to that. And, supporting people to achieve and take on bigger and bigger challenges and things that maybe they never even envisioned for themselves is pretty rewarding. But I know what you mean about, a mentor of mine once told me that the heaviest burdens that we carry tend to be those unmade decisions, and, sitting on a fence is a pretty uncomfortable place to be, so to speak. And I've been a huge, huge fan of Napoleon Hill, and that book, Think and Grow Rich, has been a big influence in my life. And in that book, there's an entire chapter that's dedicated to that one word, decision. And he says that, decision is a word that everybody's familiar with, but almost nobody really knows how to do. And most
Yeah.
people have a tendency to either defer or delay their decision making. And it's one of those things that once you get really good at making decisions, and like you said, those hard decisions quickly and firmly, it makes your life a whole lot easier. And it actually allows your business and your life to grow at a much quicker pace. But it's not easy to do, for
Yeah.
sure. So, well, I was curious, Leon. I'm wondering, do you get the sense that leaders are born or made?
I knew you were going to ask me that. Um, Everyone has the opportunity to be a leader, and it's how you. I think a combination of things, but some people, like I said, you always see the people, the outgoing person, whether it's small towns, best hockey player in the town is assumed to be the leader, but just because they're a good hockey player doesn't mean they're a leader. If they're a puck hog, that's not leadership. Leadership is making sure the whole team grows. Leadership is making sure that all those around you succeed, not just yourself. And giving credit where credit, giving credit where credit's due, and taking responsibility when things don't necessarily go the way they should. And so uh, there's that's so I think in that way leaders are born. They're not, but it's they're born, but how good a leader they are, how successful they are as a leader is how they continue to grow and adapt their leadership style based on the situation, and giving others the opportunities to succeed along the way. So that's I think that's the so I'm not sure. I'm not sure that there is. I would say everyone's born to be. I would say everyone's born to be a leader. It's just how you choose to approach it.
Cool.
So
Yeah. I think maybe some people are born with a more innate ability or certain qualities and characteristics that make them better leaders. But I think, like you said, everybody has the potential to refine some of those qualities to become better leaders. Would you agree?
yeah, for definitely, and so like people I work with, we're a lot of engineers are thought to be the bookworms. They're not the socially awkward and the typical stereotype for an engineer. And my wife keeps telling me I'm not a typical engineer. So, but it's one of those things. But I've always been a firm belief that you show your leadership based on how you act. So, if someone doesn't want to be the outgoing person and be in front of the clients all the time, they just want to do good technical work. They're showing leadership by being their technical expert in the field and doing what they do best, and sharing that knowledge with those around them. For me, I like to take my staff and introduce them to everyone I know, and teach them that you don't have to do a hard sell with everyone. You go and you build a relationship, and so you're building a relationship with people at different levels within an organization, and as those people grow their careers, you're growing your career right along with them. So you've got that intertwining of all the different levels, and so different people are going to do things differently. I'm not going to force someone who doesn't like getting in front of a crowd to go and mingle with 1,000 people at a conference when that's not what they're comfortable with. If they want to do that, I'm going to take them along and show them everything I can. So I think it's everyone has their own innate ability to be a leader, and it's just how you take that leadership role.
Right.
But like I said, being that outgoing person that always is the first one to start talking and is talking continuously, that doesn't mean they're the leader. That they can be, but it doesn't mean they are.
Right. Right. So
the other comment I'll make is people will always talk about managers being the leader of an organization. The manager is not the leader of the organization. It could be someone 3 tiers below him that's the leader of the organization. They just have the job of managing that person. But it's the person who actually shows all those attributes, that gives the credit, does all the things that need to be done. To be a good manager doesn't mean you have to be a good leader, but to be a good leader, or to be a good manager, generally you want to be a good leader if you're a good manager, but being a good manager does not mean you're a good leader.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And John C. Maxwell talks a lot about the levels of leadership. And yeah, I would agree with you that there's a difference between being a manager and being a leader. They're not necessarily the same thing. Yeah.
I've had some pretty shitty managers that I worked with over the years.
Right. I'm sure we can all relate to that. We've all been there to some degree, you know. You were recently awarded an award for mentorship. And I was curious, when you're working with young guys or with young people per se, what are some of the qualities or the characteristics, some of the traits that you see or that you look for with young leaders? What are some of the things that you see and you recognize, oh yeah, this person would make a great leader?
I think it goes back to what I said before. I think they all have opportunities to be good leaders, and but it's the people that they listen, they learn, they want to continuously learn. They want to share their experiences with others. They don't want to hog everything together. They want to share the knowledge. They want to share the credit. They want to share all of the good things about working as a team. And so it's bringing that all together. And so if you got someone that wants to do that, and I know you know exactly who I'm going to talk about here. One of our best young guys and I think the first time Matt worked with my whole team was Matt asked him what he wanted, what his ultimate goal was, and he said he wants my job. And but he wants to do it the right way, which is great. And seeing him grow over the last 2 years since he joined us has been absolutely amazing. And so he's got all those attributes. He wants to share what he knows of his knowledge. He's still trying to learn. He wants to work with people. He's getting involved in the community and the technical and business associations. So he's doing all the right things because he wants to be able to give back as he's growing. And so I think that's seeing that in a new young guy, a young person, is huge for every part of, whether it be my industry or any business around. Is you got someone that wants to learn and give back and share and give credit where credit's due, all those things. So
yeah,
and
sure.
accept the response, at the same point, accepting responsibility when things aren't going the way they should.
Yeah, there were 3 main things that jumped out at me there. And one was the continuous learner, which I would agree. The other was supporting others with things that either their experience or their knowledge, and helping them as a team. And then, like you said, I think one of the big things that I've learned over the years is a leader's willingness to take the blame when things don't go well, and a willingness to share the credit when things do. And I think that those are really big. And, to your point there, I think there's this narrative out there that this young generation, aren't very hardworking, or they're not very driven or motivated, or that they're, don't have a very good head on their shoulders. But I don't know if that's accurate. And I've had a lot of experience with some young up and comers, and in the public and also in my practice. And I've seen firsthand that, there's some real gems out there that tell me that I think that the future is in good hands. And I wouldn't necessarily be buying into the whole narrative that is being propagated on either social media or in the news, that if you look, they're out there. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely, and I agree 100%. And it's one of those. If you find the people that are that stereotype, look at their parents. I hate to say it. So I look at the people I've got working with me right now, and to every one of them, they want to get out there, they want to learn, they want to continue to grow, they want to share, they want to work hard. They don't want to work 80 hours a week all the time, but they want to work hard. So they're working what they're supposed to, and they're wanting to give back. But there are the entitled few that essentially is what everyone is seeing, and they don't want. And I've worked with some of them, and they know that they wouldn't get a job from me again because I know how they work. But it's you see them all. It takes all kinds to make life interesting, is all I'll say. But yeah, I'm not the least bit worried about the future. We've got the people I've got working with me, the young guys and girls, they're the ladies. It's a great group of people. They've got their own career goals, their own life goals, and what they want to achieve. And they're, as long as that's the crowd if that's the crowd I have to worry about, I'm not very worried, because I think the ones that are going to stand out they're going to stand out one way or another. And so I'm excited about what the future holds. I'm very proud of. I'll talk about it. My kids. I'm very proud of my kids. I know they get frustrated too with people they work with, people that don't show up for work where they're working, and it just, to others it doesn't necessarily matter. And to see my kids getting frustrated that they're people that are the same age as them, they're frustrated with their coworkers that are the same age as them because they don't have the same work ethic. So so yeah, it doesn't matter. You can look at any generation, you got the same issues. It's just now it's all out there in social media. It's on TV, it's on social media. You can't get away from it. So
Under a microscope.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, just a couple more questions here before I let you run, Leon. I want to be respectful of your time, and I'm sure appreciative of the time that you've taken already. But I'm curious. You talk a lot about mentorship, and I'm wondering, who have you looked to in the past as mentors when you were a young guy coming up the ranks? And what were some, or maybe what role did those mentors play in your life? And what were some of the principles or some of the lessons that they instilled upon you?
Um, I joke all the time that I've had some good mentors, and I've had some bad mentors. And I had a mentor. He was my boss mentor when I lived in Toronto, and he stayed a mentor technically throughout my career until he passed away about 5 or 6 years ago. But he knew everything about what our business was about. He understood it technically. He gave me the opportunity to learn about getting involved in the consulting associations, gave me opportunities to learn about the business. He was the one that wanted me to take over as a group manager when I lived in Toronto, mainly because he hated that sort of thing. So I learned lots technically and about the business from him. And then I also learned lots about what not to do when dealing with people. Because he was one of those guys that he'd come in and start screaming at me because something didn't go right, and he never did, but that's the way he operated. So it was like early switch. That's not the way I'm going to ever treat people, and I'm going to stand up for my people. I'm going to support the people, even if it means putting myself at my own neck on the line sometimes. So. And then I've had some wonderful mentors who are all about. I wouldn't rely on them for anything to help me technically do my job, but as far as dealing with people, learning about myself, learning about the people around me, and so I've had sort of those two extremes, and then I've had the whole broad range in the middle. Some of my best lessons have come from my kids. So
Yeah,
I
that's
consider my
true.
kids mentors of mine as well. So some of the things I've learned just dealing with my kids and being involved in the freestyle ski community and dealing with kids all the way along. It's always amazing watching kids. And again, you've got I'm here for myself, and then you got the others that are there for everyone around, including themselves, and making sure everyone's on the same page. So it's watching the kids is some of the biggest lessons you can learn.
Yeah, that's the truth. I'll second that for sure. I think that oftentimes we think that we're the ones that are teaching them. But I'll tell you, I know firsthand that my kids have taught me more about myself and more about life than I'll probably ever teach them. And so I think you're absolutely on point with that.
Yeah.
But you bring up an interesting point about mentors. And in the past, I made the mistake of kind of putting mentors up on a pedestal, so to speak, and thinking that because they were a little further ahead or a little bit more successful or a little bit older, that they maybe have it all figured out. And I realized that, nobody is perfect.
Yeah.
There are certain people that I've looked to in the past that I can see as, role models and mentors for business, but I don't like the way that, like you said, they treat their family or their employees, or vice versa. I see people who are great fathers or husbands, but not exactly driven or motivated in their careers. And so what I've found myself do is I'm a bit of a kleptomaniac in the sense that if I see somebody doing something that I like, I'll just steal it. I'll just take the
Yeah.
idea and I'll kind of like create this mosaic, so to speak, or an amalgamation of all of these different inspirations, take what works and leave the rest. And yeah, in the past, I've found that that's worked well for me.
Yeah, and it's the part I hate about businesses that decide they're going to have a formal mentorship program
Sure.
is, well, you're now assigned to me as I'm your mentor, Matt. Well, that may or may not work.
Right.
And so I think the best mentorships I've had over the years are sort of the informal mentorships.
Sure.
I'm able to spend time with people that change my way of thinking or help change my way of thinking, people that challenge my way of thinking, people that challenge me technically, mentally, physically, whatever it is. And so yeah, it's there's the best mentorships I've had are the informal ones, and but people that can give you a different perspective on life, on business, on family. Those are always, I think, have been the best opportunities for mentorship.
Yeah, and I think it's probably fair to say that some people will naturally gravitate to some people more than others, and
Yeah,
you could just expect that. But well,
yeah,
last question
exactly.
before I let you run here, Leon. What advice would you have to any young leaders or young up and comers who are looking to be either leaders in their industry or leaders in their community, or maybe even just leaders for themselves and their life or their families as they move forward? Any lasting words that you want to leave us with today?
I think that the biggest thing is figure yourself out first. So whether it be doing a personality profile to see what makes you tick, but if you don't understand yourself, you're never going to understand what's happening around you and how you're impacting people. So figure that out, and then just continuously learning and growing, taking on new challenges. But if you don't understand yourself, it's always hard to. It's going to be very hard to understand why people are perceiving you the way they are, why they react to you when you make a statement, whatever. So uh, it's some people will always tell me that when I'm giving a presentation, I always look so serious, but I'm not gonna that's me, but it's I look serious, but the tone of my voice will change. I'll slow things down, I'll speed things up, I'll get excited. I will actually start waving my hands. But if you don't understand how you are yourself, it's pretty hard to understand how you might impact others around you. So So it's yeah, get a good understanding of yourself, and then start figuring out why or how you're impacting other people around you. So
timeless wisdom right there. Know thyself.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, any last questions from anybody here on the call today? Any questions or any comments before I let everybody run?
I just want to say thank you guys very much for your time, and sorry I couldn't be in front of the camera. But I definitely know you don't want to see my face all day. I got to work too.
Well, thanks for the challenging question.
Hey, I was going to ask what your favorite leadership book is.
Mine? You know, I don't actually know. I haven't given that any thought.
Put you on the spot. If something comes to mind,
a challenging question for me.
If something comes to mind, maybe feel free to let us know later, and I'll be sure to pass along the message.
Will do.
Yeah. Brian, what's your favorite leadership book? Turn the tables.
One of my favorite leadership books, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Say that one more time.
Oh, sorry, just connecting to the car. 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. Pretty much anything John Maxwell is up there, right?
Agreed.
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, he's a beauty. Thanks, Brian. Anybody else? Any other last questions? All right. Well, Leon, I just want to say thanks again from the bottom of my heart. I certainly appreciate you. It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last, well, probably been close to a decade now, isn't it?
Over a decade now.
Over a decade now, yeah. So about a decade or so. You know, it's been an honor and a pleasure to get to work with you and your team. And it's also been an honor and a pleasure to have you here today to impart a little bit of your wisdom with us. And I hope everybody enjoyed that. So thank you again. And I certainly look forward to connecting with you again soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.